This podcast was a total mess, an absolute mess, and I had to go back and sort through that mess in order to release it to the public. Pretty much we had a ton of technical difficulties while we were recording. Phones dying, headphones not working, internet not being stable enough. Thankfully, I went through everything. Hopefully it'll come out all right. And I think it was worth the wait. This is a podcast I did together with Ben Lerner. Ben is not only an incredibly talented musician, he's a close friend. We volunteered for years together in Camp Simcha. We've traveled on staff trips for High Lifeline. And he's just a super deep person who's always got a smile on his face, upbeat, positive attitude. We played a lot of music together, we've jammed, and I was happy to finally be able to talk to him and record it so that everyone else could get a sneak peek of all the insight and just overall vibe that he has to add. If you haven't heard any of his music, I recommend you go listen now. Definitely worth it. And here's our podcast together. Hopefully also worth it.
What's going on? Like, tell me. I mean, you're supposed to ask me that, but I want to ask you first. Like, what's going on with this podcast? Like, how did this happen?
So I was in America a lot of last year, and right before I came back, I was talking to a couple people about different things, and I was like, it's so interesting to me. People are scared of talking like open and honestly about a lot of aspects of life and reality, and like what people are going through and struggles, and I was like, imagine we just had conversations, like, 'cause I had these conversations with people, and they're like, "Yo, this should be like a podcast." I'm like, "Let's just make it a podcast."
Right. I mean,
I have
you're
no
doing
filter.
nicely.
You know,
Your numbers are nice. I mean, 245 subscribers. That's very good for the niche that you're in. So that's very, very cool. I will not be honest at all. I'm just letting you know in advance. I do not plan to be honest, but yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I don't know if you have to be honest. It's just about having certain conversations. That way, you know, getting rid of the taboo, kind of, you know?
Right.
Because like everyone's going through things, and we like to keep it to ourselves. I was talking to somebody last week, and I'm like, it's funny. Whenever anything happens, we tend to imagine like it just popped up from here, you know? So, you know, in the yeshiva system, like, let's say, Lamashal, they have this concept of, like, the guy snapped, right?
Right.
Or, you know, that family down the block who, like, they were such a happy, healthy family, and then, like, suddenly they get divorced. Like, what happened, right? I'm like, what that means is there are years of, like, struggle, of, like, unhealthiness, of challenges, of pain, of abuse, whatever it is, right? And then eventually it's just Ad Khan. It's like the last straw that broke the camel back. And we don't see the whole struggle. We pretend like everything's perfect, and then like boom, you know?
Right.
Robin Williams is no longer with us, you know? And it's just like Ki'ilu, it was perfect until now, and then one day is just not interested. Like, obviously not.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, it's a huge issue, and I hope this podcast resolves that issue. You know, I hope we all. I think it's getting better. I think it's not, you know, it's not a from thing. It's a world thing. You know, people.
For sure.
You know, people like to reflect that everything is going great in their lives, and we're never going to get rid of that impulse because we're trying to advertise to other people that things are good, and I think that is also healthy to an extent. But yeah, definitely, like, in small groups, I think it's very important to be vulnerable. It's interesting to be vulnerable on a public platform. Do you find that really works? Like, did you freeze, by the way? Or are you
I didn't
there?
freeze, no.
You didn't freeze.
Listening so intently.
You're listening so intensely. Yeah. How has it been for you so far? Like, how long have you been doing this? And how does it feel?
I'm like 7 episodes in or something. I've gotten very interesting reactions, especially from the people commenting on whoever I'm speaking to.
Right.
Because a lot of the people watching obviously already know me, so I don't have that much to necessarily add. When you're talking to someone and they're expressing how they're going through, especially I had a couple girls on, and I feel like they're not like a random Jewish girl is not really featured that much on like a podcast forum to have like a long discussion about anything. And people are like, "Whoa, I really connect to what she's saying, and I really appreciate it." And it's so nice. I'm curious I'd love to see what she's working on, like her projects and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, the whole thing for women is very different than it is for men. The whole life experience and from experience. I actually saw something crazy on Instagram. Instagram started giving me content that I'm actually interested in, which is terrible. They basically figured out that if they just show me like pictures of women, like I'll eventually be like, okay, like I don't care. But if they write like inspirational quotes from like Warren Buffett, then I'll read it. So now that's what I'm getting. So someone posted, what would life be like if all men disappeared from the planet for 24 hours? And all the reactions were like, oh, I'd go running at night in the park by myself. And I'm like, whoa, like I'm not like a super, I'm regularly liberal, not like super progressive, but I was like, oh my God, like people are afraid to go out at night, because they're women, and that's, there's no way we're gonna resolve that, I think, but it's such a different experience, like what women go through in life and what women go through in like the frum community, and I really never even thought about it until I got married. So it's very interesting. We should bring my wife on. I think she'll have what to say.
That'd be interesting. I'd love to.
Yeah. She's
that, and also like the whole tznius thing is like such an different experience.
You saw the toes? You saw the thing about the toes? No. There's this ad going around for prosthetic toes. So basically, like if a woman wants to be tznius, but she wants to show off her feet, like in sandals, like women wear sandals and their toes are exposed. So there's a debate of how tznius that is. So someone is selling prosthetic toes, like custom feet that you put on your feet. It's a joke. It's not real. It's parody. But people are like calling in and asking like all these detailed questions, like, do you want Sephardi toes or Ashkenazi toes? And then like the different colors of nail polish are like, depends how frum you are. So there's like the YU color and the Touro College color and the SKA color, like different colors. And then the guy asked, it's just like a joke back and forth. The guy asked like, why did you make the YU more right wing than SKA? So they said, well, because YU just won the lawsuit that banned the gay club in YU. They won that lawsuit, so now they're more right wing. So their toes are going to be more right wing. Yeah, I'm just repeating the joke. I don't know. Yeah.
Sounds like an interesting. Yeah, I missed it.
Yeah, you missed it. What's that like living in Israel? Like, are you plugged into all the American garbage that goes on, or are you kind of like in your own space?
So I listen to a lot of like American podcasters myself.
Mm-hmm.
So on that front, I'm fairly plugged in. But outside of that, I'm not necessarily following anything.
Right. So you said you've been in America last year, but this year you're pretty much in Israel.
I've been in Israel so far this whole year. I'll probably head back in like a month for work for a couple weeks, and then I'll head back over.
So so work is like an America thing for you.
I'm working online. I'm doing
I'm
doing marketing and like CX for an American company.
That's so cool. Right, you're a traveler. You even have a song about traveling. I remember that. Yeah.
So I'll probably be back at some point. But in general, as far as politics, I would say I'm more plugged into America.
Mm-hmm.
I never really understood Israeli politics well enough.
They just replace the governments all the time.
Yeah, I never really understood it, and it's not something I really care to get into. American politics I follow, but it's not even to like vote on anything. It's just as far as like demographic, like what's going on. Yeah, it's like what's going on with with the country.
Sports, yeah,
It's also a talking point.
I have like phases when I really try to tune out. because I really believe wholeheartedly that it's complete nonsense and there's absolutely nothing to follow. But you get sucked back in. Like something happens, and then I could be off the news for 2 months, but then like one event will just put me right back in, and then I'll be in. I remember I had like yeah.
I don't necessarily try to tune out. I just try to remember that a lot of these debates and stuff, like as important as it is as far as the number of people being affected, at the end of the day, percentage-wise, sometimes it's so small, and they make it sound like this is like a whole country. Like, obviously, it's a hot take, and like maybe I'll be canceled. Who knows? But let's say like the trans debates.
You're not big enough. You can't use the word.
I'm hoping they'll cancel me, right?
Use
I'm hoping to get canceled, bro. I'm dying to get canceled.
People start using the word cancel when they're like talking to their friend. Like, I might get canceled for
That's
this.
how you blow up.
That's not how it works.
It's just an expression of saying like I know this is like controversial, but like let's say like the trans debate, right? How many people are there already in the whole America who are like? This is a tiny percentage of people, like tiny. Even the abortion debate. Obviously, I'm not saying like if you think people should have a choice or if you think you shouldn't kill babies. Obviously, that's a discussion. But I'm saying percentage-wise, we're talking about less than 1. We're talking about like 0.2%, like something minuscule.
So somehow, I think you're right, but somehow I actually know a couple of people. I can think of 3 people who are dealing with this in their lives. So could be it's not so minuscule, or maybe just I live in New York. I don't know. So like these are the people that I see.
Would you say you know more than a couple hundred people?
No, I'd say I know like 3. So
I'm saying, not saying it doesn't affect people. No, so I'm saying on the news they make it sound like whoa, every person matters. Let's get this straight. Every person matters.
Right.
But I think on the news they make it sound like you're affecting everyone's day-to-day life if you do this.
Yeah. I think one good thing about growing up I didn't have a TV in the house. Did you have a TV in your house?
We had a TV when I was younger till I was probably like 10, and then we moved, and my mom tried like hiding it in one of the closets.
Right.
My brother and I found it, and we obviously like took it out, hid it in our closet.
Right, but like we never had like the culture of watching the news, So I think that's actually a good thing. I can't imagine there are people who actually like turn on the TV every day. I mean, I know that's not how people consume news anymore, but it's the same mindset, like people religiously checking the news every day, and to think that that's making you informed is just, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's so small-minded, and so it's a story. It's just like a bad TV show. You're not getting anything. You're not getting anything real. But everyone knows that.
The regular news is the same way, by the way. The concept of like in America, like showing you what's going on in Israel. There was an attack, there was a stabbing, there was whatever. And it's like, again, obviously it's horrible. Every life matters and this and that. But, we watch the American news and they'll show you, there was a shooting in downtown Chicago. Like,
well,
there's hundreds of millions of people here.
Yeah, it's also an interesting thing that like, look, I want to be informed, right? I want to know what's going on in the world, because what's going on in the world is somewhat like what I'm going through. And to just say I'm not following any news is difficult, because then I have this feeling of like alienation, like, oh, I don't know what's up. But if you follow news, so like, okay, so I'll be updated on the latest shooting. Like, is that what makes me an informed person? Because I know like who shot who in which city. Like, there's gotta be another way to stay informed. Not even to stay informed, to feel informed. Because you're never really informed. Like, you never really know what's going on. But like, there's got to be a better way to feel like you know what's going on than reading about how many people were killed in a shooting. But I don't know what it is.
I'm just saying, like, obviously every shooting matters, but there are, almost like 20,000 cities, in America. Like, You got to take it with a grain of salt, as they say, and they bring it to you as if this is like they're trying to emotionally trigger everyone because that gets more clicks. Let's be real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but I think like there is a need to stay informed, to know what's going on, and I'm curious what other avenues there are to doing that, like books, like I don't know. I'm open to suggestions.
It's a good question. I was with Z at one point.
Right, how's that guy doing? Right.
He's doing well. So we were in Yerushalayim in like a makolet, and we like weren't wearing masks, and this lady came over. It was like at the end of the whole mask balagan that was already, and she was like losing it. She was yelling, she was screaming, right? And Z's like, yeah, it's all, and she asked him an interesting question. She's like, where do you consume your information from? Like, if you can't trust anyone, then where do you consume information? It was like an interesting.
It's a crazy.
He's just like he's like, just do things. Right. Like, stop with the whole worrying about the news. Just go do things. Make a difference. Make a change. Get things done. Like, stop worrying about everything around you and everyone else. Go be the change that you want to see in the world. But it was an interesting question to me. Like, where do you get your information?
It's a crazy thing. Because at the end of the day, you do have to make some kind of choice of like to believe something, even if it's not a choice. But like at the end of the day, like certain things like make sense to you and certain things don't, and you have to process that. So I think it's very important to expose yourself to information that makes sense to you. But at the end of the day, you have to trust your own mind. Like I like to think of it as an automatic process. You know what I mean? Like I can try to work on my thinking. I can try to be a better thinker. But at the end of the day, whatever I believe, and there's nothing to change about that. There's nothing to do. So, but it's a good question. She had a good question. Right?
It was an interesting question.
Yeah.
So for me, I try to extract the information and leave the hot take.
Right.
Because everyone, as they're giving over the story, they're also being like, they're throwing in all this, I'll give you an interesting example. I just watched a short video from Ray Yosef Mizrahi against like Manis Friedman and his new book, right?
See, to me, that's like Democrat and Republican.
I hear that.
Same thing.
But I watched the video, and he says Manis Friedman's new book, like he's a total kaifer, like he's an apikaris, he's a this, he's a that. Gives him a whole bunch of names and whatever, throws a bunch of things at him, right? And then he launches into like a 6-minute discussion on what everything that like the Torah has to say about someone who's an apikaris and who's a kaifer, right? But he never actually proves that he is that thing. He doesn't give any examples of anything in the book. He doesn't quote anything, right? He doesn't show you anything. He just goes into a whole passionate, like emotional speech, trying to rile you up about what a horrible person he is because he's a X, Y, and Z, and this is what the Torah says about someone who's X, Y, and Z. And if you're thinking and you're not getting pulled into the passion, you're like, he didn't actually prove anything. He didn't give me any information. I finished the 7-minute video, and I'm like, it was a total waste of time. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't understand why we spend 7 minutes yelling, and we don't spend 7 minutes saying, listen, he said this, Torah says this. He said this, the rabbis say this. Just give me examples. I don't need all the passion. I don't need all the yelling. I don't need you to tell me who's going to hell. Show me where people went wrong, and I'll accept it. It's not... I posted a video at one point about one of Rabbi Yaron Reuven's things, and I pointed out all the things where I think what he said was not intelligent.
I think I saw that actually. What was the topic?
There were a few of them. I don't know.
No, but which one did you respond to?
One of them. I did a few small clips. It was like a big video, but it was basically him talking about all these people who are all going to hell and they're all horrible people. And Dennis Prager is the biggest threat ever. And Ben Shapiro talks to him, so that makes Ben Shapiro a horrible person.
I mean, the question is
Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs is a horrible person.
I love Rabbi Sachs. Do we have to take these people into account at all? Like a guy like your own or like Mizrahi. I mean, do they have any real place in our lives? Like who are?
I mean, they have a pretty big
people
in our lives.
Who
no,
are these people? Yeah, I barely.
They're some of these people are besides being very passionate. There's not a lot on YouTube at the end of the day, right? And a lot of people are drawn towards the passion and the energy and the extremism. A lot of people like extremism. They like being told what to do.
Right.
Masochism is a thing.
Totally.
But what bothers me is there's a lot of dishonesty in these people's debates and discussions. There's just a lot of straight up blatant, I can make video after video about all the dishonesty where that you just spun that.
Right.
I'm okay if you disagree with people, but there's no need to spin things.
I think unfortunately there is a frum version of QAnon, which is people who watch that. Whatever exists in the world, there's a microcosm of it, in the frum world.
For sure.
The frum world literally is a world, and it mirrors the bigger world. And it's funny to live in both. You can't, you're a smart guy. Just let these guys go. It doesn't matter.
So one of those videos, somebody commented on the bottom. Somebody commented about how dare you speak like that about Rabbi Reuven? How dare you? He helped change my life. I'm listen, I'm not saying that he can't do good things. Obviously, people can do good things.
I mean,
people can say brilliant things.
He always has a seltzer bottle on the bima where he speaks.
He could be trusted then.
And he yells guy. And he wants. I respect the grift. I don't think that guy really.
Somebody commented on one of my videos. He was very bent out of shape. He's like, "This is my rabbi. How dare you speak like that against my rabbi?"
I mean,
I'm like, my rabbi doesn't hold of him. I don't know, whatever. We went back and forth, and I'm like, listen. I understand that I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm not saying that he doesn't say some amazing things and give over some amazing Torahs. I'm just saying I think what he said in this video was incorrect. Now, if you disagree with me, you're welcome to point out why you disagree, and I'll take my video down. I'll apologize. I'll put an apology video. Right. And the guy disappeared. Yeah, that was the end of the discussion. We went back and forth. Second, I'm like, tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's not part of the discussion. Listen, if you're making these videos to build your own following and siphon some of your own people into your own camp, then I'm all for it. But to actually debate people on
So the actual story was I had a friend, Naftali. I think you know him.
Naftali. Are you not saying his last name on purpose?
Blumenthal.
Okay.
I'll say his name and then I'll cut it out.
Okay, great.
Naftali Blumenthal. You know him, right? So he sent me one of his videos. He's like, "What do you think about this guy?" And I started watching the video. I'm like, "This guy's psycho. He's yelling and he's passionate, whatever. But nothing he's saying is intelligent. Not a single word I've heard yet is intelligent." So I was started commenting to Naftali. I started watching this video and I'm like, you know what? Stop. I hit record. And I just started ranting to whatever, and then I sent Naftali a link for the YouTube video.
And that's how the video. The video came about of you, right?
That was the video. I did a full video, a commentary video, posted and sent Naftali a link.
Right.
I'm like, this guy's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, you find videos of, Muslim preachers who literally sound like these guys. It's literally the same thing. They look the same. They have the big black bushy beards. And they yell in a fiery way about the extreme lack of tznius in the Muslim community, and it literally sounds like the people you mentioned. So yeah, you can't take that seriously at all. It's look, the way I understand it, we're the Jewish religion, but we're also the Jewish family. And it's a lot of people. The Jewish family is a lot of people, and different people are going to gravitate towards different leaders. And this stuff, I mean, it's it's Musar, it's preaching, it's entertainment, it's everything at once, So there's no way to react to it. Like if you're
It's funny because the fiery passion doesn't bother me.
Right.
It doesn't bother me. The yelling doesn't bother me. The fiery passion doesn't bother me. Let's say, Lemashal, Yaron did a video about shaitels, how horrible shaitels are.
Okay.
Right? Women wearing wigs, married women wearing wigs, right? I'm more than okay with that video. I am. And there are people who share that opinion with him, and it's horrible. But part of the video that he does is he throws Rabbi Manis Friedman under the bus, and he says Rabbi Manis Friedman says wearing a wig is beautiful and amazing and it's okay and whatever. And he makes it like no one holds that. Like Manis Friedman is a total outlier, and he's crazy, and it's disgusting, and how could he, and he's a kafir, right? He makes it like a horrible person, and then he starts going through all the people who hold it's not okay. Now, obviously, their opinions hold it's not okay, but their opinions hold it is okay, okay? He adds into the opinions who hold it's not okay, he adds the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he takes something he said totally out of context, and he throws it in. The reality is, if you read the whole clip that Lubavitcher Rebbe said, he said, yes, it's better maybe to cover your hair, but the reality is it's very hard and it's too much to ask from people and it's not going to end up happening. Everyone should wear a wig. That's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. It's in there. But he doesn't clip the part where the Lubavitcher Rebbe said everyone should wear a wig. He clips the part where he said it's better to cover your hair. But he doesn't use the word better. He says everyone should cover their hair. Lubavitcher Rebbe. And then he makes Manis Friedman sound like he's an outlier and like he's going against Lubavitch, which is not true. Lubavitcher Rebbe said everyone should wear a wig. That's what I can't deal with. You want to yell, you want to scream, you want to quote all these rabbis from Harediville, from Bnei Brak, from this, from that, who say everyone's going to hell for wearing a wig. Knock yourself out. I'm more than okay with that. But you don't have to add the Lubavitcher Rebbe and pretend like he said it's not true. It's just a different opinion.
I mean,
that I can't deal with. The dishonesty pisses me off.
There's a lot of it. I just say leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's not.
No one's gonna go read through the whole Lubavitcher Rebbe's tshuva and say it's just not true. No one's gonna do that.
Yeah. I never for a second, took these guys into the equation. And it's just, they don't. What
happens when you don't take these guys into the equation sometimes is they get bigger than you.
Right. One day I'm gonna turn around. There's gonna be like a big, picture of him in the shul. I'll be like, what's going on? Yeah.
I just saw him now in Rechavia. They had these big signs for they did a siyum on Shas and Zohar and this and that. Bunch of different rabbis, Mikubalim, Vizen, Aaron Ruven is there. He's making a siyum on whatever. I don't remember somebody made a siyum on Mishnayos.
It's very interesting to talk about from leadership, especially on the internet. But my impression is that there isn't such clear leadership right now, at least what I see. So there's just going to be a lot of rabbis sitting on the dais, and different people are going to be saying different things. It's weird sometimes. It's weird. I was very into Rabbi Sachs before he died. I mean, I'm still into him, but I was into him when he was alive. Are you into Rabbi Sachs at all? I love watching stuff. I used to buy the books before every single it's time for Bereshis. I bought the Bereshis book, and there are certain things he says that are so controversial. They don't really fit in my head in the basic realm of orthodoxy, and I've tried to confront a certain mainstream Orthodox popular rabbi, the rabbi you're quoting, says things that you would never say, you would probably call this heresy. And he kind of brushed me off. He's leave me alone, I like the book. Don't make me have to explain to you why everything Rabbi Sachs said is kosher. That's not my job, I like him, I'm going to quote him. So, Rabbi Sachs said certain things that he was actually he had one big issue at one point. Do you know this history? So Rabbi Sachs put out a book where he said that all religions need to be respected, and I think he said something a good Christian is gonna go to heaven also because he followed his religion, and basically everyone should just follow their religion and you'll be okay. So he equated all the religions. He said all religions are good. So he got flack for that. They said, like, you have to apologize. You have to, like, take it out. So he ended up putting out another book where he just, like, omitted those parts. But I think he still sold, like, the first edition. So, like, you can buy the first edition and you can buy the second edition.
I mean, he was very big into working across the island. He was very big into religions uniting to fight the common
He was a very practical
problems.
person, very pragmatic, incredibly good at politics. And people respected him for that. And when I went to this, like, small-time rabbi, who's not so small, but, you know, he's the rabbi of a popular shul. And I'm like, you're quoting Rabbi Sachs. I'm like, Rabbi Sachs said this and this. Do you also believe this? He's like, dude, like, leave me alone. Like,
I don't think quoting somebody means you have to hold of everything they said. Someone can tell me something intelligent, and I can think that most of what that person says is really stupid, but, like, that one thing is very intelligent.
So this is like a long-winded way of me saying that, like, it happens for the worse and it happens for the better. You know, like, you'll have...
It only bothers me when people quote as a name drop. Then I'm bothered. In other words, when you say something to me, what's his name says this, and I'm like, does that make any sense to you? And you're like, no. I'm like, then why are you saying it? Because he says it? Do you hold of anything else he says? Then it bothers me. You know what I mean? But if it makes sense to you and someone else says it and you quote them, Omer Davar B'Shem Omro, you know, maybe Gula Olam. Like, if you
does that really work for you though? Like, can I really change your mind by saying, like, well, this guy says this? Like,
for me, no. That's why I don't appreciate it.
Right, exactly. I was just reading.
It never worked for me.
Right, it never worked for me either.
I remember when I was in high school, I was having a discussion with somebody. They said, you know, sometimes you just want to turn on the Christian channel and listen to a Christian preacher and hear all their stupidity. Because, like, makes you feel better about Judaism. And I'm like, you're wasting your time. Like, I'm like, that's just weird. Like, you have to, like realize how stupid. Like, just go open a Gemara. Like, I
actually think it's very scary. I think if people try to expose themselves to other religions, they'll find how hauntingly similar they sound to Judaism.
Anyhow, let's put that aside for 1 second. Put that aside for 1 second. But I was like, you're just wasting your time. And his reply was, but what's his name does it? Like some older bacher in yeshiva, right?
Right.
And I'm then what's his name is wasting his time.
Right. Like,
it doesn't change my opinion.
Proof.
Should we get into perennialism now?
Proof
versus
from
pluralism?
I don't know the terms. I'm not as good.
I just watched a great debate between Zevi Slavin and some other intellectual, Jonathan something. I don't remember his last name.
Hi.
I'll try to post a link.
Like an older guy, like a professor, or like a...
He's a professor. He seemed like that, but he's not very old. He wasn't Jonathan Haidt. I don't remember who it was. I could probably find it.
You know
right
who Jonathan Haidt is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a great discussion. Zevi's like, it's not a debate. This is a discussion, and it was phenomenal. It was really a discussion. He did a great job.
I don't know Zevi. I just know that on your channel he has the most views.
Yeah, so some of his own people came through. I love Zevi. He has a channel called Seekers of Unity, with, like, you know, over 20,000 subscribers. He's built it up a lot. Very eclectic crowd, and he discusses anything and everything. The discussion was with a person, Jonathan Wiedenbaum. Wiedenbaum is a professor of philosophy and world religions at Berkeley College.
Beautiful.
Berkeley. Great discussion. So Zevi argued for something called perennialism, and Jonathan Wiedenbaum argued for something called pluralism. The idea of pluralism, I'm going to go backwards for a second. Jonathan actually opens up the discussion. He explains both. The idea of pluralism is that every religion is different and should all be taken within their own bubble, and they shouldn't be compared to each other. You shouldn't try to equate them. You shouldn't try to mix them up. You shouldn't try to see the similarities. So they're all different. The idea, my understanding, if I misquote anything or I misunderstand anything, I'm not a Bucky in terminology. I'm not an expert.
Well, you're trying. Terms. You're using the terms.
I get
at
concepts.
Least, right?
I'm trying.
But
I might be messing this up.
You edit these podcasts, by the way?
Yeah.
Awesome, because I
might be messing this up.
Right. No, it's great. That's good you edit them. So, no, because we had like a little bit of like awkward silence before, but we're doing much better now. We're doing good. We're doing much better.
So,
yeah.
The idea of perennialism, and I don't actually like the term. Like, I don't like the box of it. But the idea of it is that if you dig into the esoteric traditions of every religion, you'll actually find a lot of similarities, more similarities than differences. At the core of every religion, there's some sort of reality or truth that we're all trying to express, and it's similar pretty much in like every tradition at the core. And then from that core, we all kind of end up in different places. Now, I don't like it because the term makes you kind of look for that core at every person. I don't think we should be looking to find similarities, but I have looked at a lot of other religions and traditions and spiritual practices, and I do see that we're mainly similar, like you said. But I'm not trying to find that. You shouldn't be searching for similarities. That I think can lead you to wrong conclusions.
Yeah.
But I think if you try to understand them as separate entities, eventually I think you will understand there's a lot that's similar here.
You know, as much as this stuff is intellectual, I don't really think it is. I mean, it's intellectual for you. Maybe it's intellectual for me. Jordan Peterson said somewhere, like, if you're one of those people who likes to have deep discussions and philosophical discussions, like, stop complaining that like your friends don't want to talk to you, because like you're in a minority of people, and that's okay. And like, find the people who you want to talk to about this and who you could have these discussions with, and like, leave everyone else the F alone. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, like that makes sense, you know? So that's why I'm happy you're doing this, because like you can seek out those other people. Can I tell people my main memory of you? Like, you already know this. So Yitzy and I were
nervous.
Yitzy and I were commissioned to go on a trip to Niagara Falls with a bunch of kids who are recovering from cancer, and all the other staff members, there was about 12 of us, all the other staff members were hired to like work, to carry food, to take care of the kids, to set up tables. Yitzy and I were hired purely for our, extremely charismatic personality.
I was going to say eclectic sure.
personalities. And
eccentric, maybe.
And one of the things that happened was we had radios, and Yitzy would start the day on the radios. He would say, okay, this is the daily Kabbalah that we're going to learn. And daily Kabbalah was broadcasted over the radios, which no one understood anything you said, including me. But I was at least happy that there was something in the day called daily Kabbalah. So like, guys, like, you have to seek each other out. Like, you can't be sitting in the middle of the room being like, how come no one wants to debate, perennialism versus pluralism with me? Like, these are not, conversations for everyone. So, back to what we were saying about like, groups, at the end of the day, like I'm saying, I really think of Judaism as a family, and I think of religions as groups. And I think the reason people use that term now, like Judeo-Christian values, and it drives me nuts, because I'm like, when did this become a group? When did this become a thing? Like like I was never told, like, am I part of this now? Because I'm Jewish, I'm part of like Judeo-Christian values. Like I was never told about this. But I think right now, there's much more of an understanding between religious groups than there is between religious and non-religious people. I think the divide there has become much bigger. So that makes, Jews and Christians align a lot more, because in lifestyle, we have a lot more similarity. There's a focus on family, there's a focus on faith of any kind, just more conservative, more traditional. So I think the fight is no longer between religions. It's between, religious and non-religious people. And that's why people are...
So Rabbi Sachs's big thing.
Right. Well, it was his life's work. I mean, he was hanging out with Prince Charles, the pedophile who's now the king.
But he did this divide in his head. He saw this divide coming before it was cool. Right. Before people were talking about Judeo-Christian values, he's like, listen, the world is realigning, and it's realigning where our threat is going to be the non-religious now.
Right.
So let's team up with all the different religions, and we can get more done.
Right. So that's just where we're at in history, and it's funny because, historically we're like, wait, but like the Christians were killing the Jews, like for all this time, like, and now like we're supposed to be friends with them. But that's where we're at. We're in an interesting spot, in history. And because our interests align more, and when I say ours, I'm not talking about like me, I'm talking about just like religious Jews and like religious Christians. So the interests align more. So now we're like kind of on the same team. And it feels funny. And people might not like it,
It is kind of funny.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we really are on the same team. I had a very interesting moment in my life. A couple of years ago, our friend Ari Dembitzer recommended me for this event. I got a phone call. This is probably like 5 years ago. Hi, are you a Jewish singer? Yes. Okay, we're doing a Jerusalem Day event, and we need you to come and sing like some Jewish songs. Okay, great. So I look into this, like, what is this event? There's a guy named Dr. Mark Christian. That's his name. He's an OBGYN, but he's like the son of one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And he decided that he doesn't like Islam anymore, and he's becoming Christian, and his life's work is to expose the radicalization and terrorist intent of all Muslims. That's like his job. And therefore, he's going to make a Jerusalem Day event that pretty much is going to be attended by like a church in Omaha, Nebraska. So the church invited the local Jewish community to participate in this Jerusalem Day event. And like the conservative temple said, like, we're not going because you guys are racists. And the Reform said, like, we're not going because you guys are racist. Because they're basically saying you guys hate Muslims. Like, that's what this group is. But Ari said, as bad as that is, it's very weird if like Gentiles next to us are making an event to celebrate Jerusalem and like no Jews show up. Like that's crazy. Like we have to go. So, and then he told them to call me. So I get there, and I had never really been in like a real Christian environment, not a Gentile environment, a Christian environment. And speech after speech was people talking about prove how Israel is really the Holy Land, and this is the land that Jesus walked, and Abraham and Jesus, and videos. And there was like a pretty famous politician there, Michelle Bachmann, who like was the Republican presidential candidate at some point, who is like a pretty mainstream person. Like she was a Republican candidate. She went pretty far, but she was spewing like pretty Christian stuff, like off the record. Like she wasn't saying things she would like say at a regular rally. It's like these people are really hardcore. And then one guy came up at the end, and he like went into like a real preaching like thing, and like everyone was yelling amen, and he was like summoning up spirits. It was very interesting. And I just remember we were all sitting there, and like they brought us our kosher food, and in the middle of like some woman speaking about Christianity, we all start like ruffling our like silver foil, and it's super loud. Like the silver foil that they bring kosher food in, it's very, very loud. Yeah. And I'm like Jesus walked like the land of Israel, and we're like opening up and like they asked me to sing Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. The people there had no interest in me whatsoever. Like the fact that there were actual Jews there, it was like, it was not important to them, because in their own tradition, Israel is important, and Israel, in their own tradition, Israel needs to be given to the Jews. The fact that there were actually like physical Jews like sitting there, and there was like a guy singing like Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. They never heard Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. They don't want to hear Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. So it was a very, and there's more. I'm telling you, like the short version. Yeah, that's my experience with Christianity.
Was it a nice experience at least?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's very interesting. You know, we had security guards. At one point, I had to pick up a guitar from someone. I said, okay, we have to go to a certain address because they sent security guards to like pick me up from the airport because they were afraid that like they would be attacked by, I don't know, Muslims. I don't know what they thought would happen. So they're like, okay, like I said, we have to go to this house to pick up an item, which was a guitar. They're like, is this a religious item? I'm like, well, it's a guitar. Like, I don't know, like
spiritual, but like not like religious. You know,
it's not like I'm not bringing a Torah with me. Yeah, it was very, very interesting. And one of the guys, I didn't really like how they treated me. They put me in a hotel room with another person. They didn't give me my own hotel room. And that guy was like some crazy activist who like to chain himself to abortion clinics, you know, because he's like protesting abortion. So he was my roommate. He's like, I got arrested 50 times. I'm like, okay. I'm like spending the night like in the same room with this guy. And the craziest thing is, well, I'm actually not even going to say the crazy part. Okay. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's move on. Yeah.
Once we're talking about guitar, so you play guitar, right? You write music.
I play guitar. Yeah. Yeah.
And you just released a new song. Is that correct?
I released a new song. Yes.
What
yes.
You want to talk about the inspiration for the song and like, what it's about?
I'll talk about it. Thank you for asking. I know I asked you in advance to bring it up. You know, musician to musician, you know, self-promotion is very important. And if you made it through everything until now, I just still want to hear.
I'm going to edit this out, put it at the beginning. Right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Do your thing.
Kidding.
So it's been a very exciting journey this year, putting out music. I've been trying to get into this mode for a very long time. And just finally this year, you know, met the right people, started putting out songs. You know, so far put out 3 songs this year. This last one is called Asking for a Friend, which is supposed to be a pun on when you're advertising on your WhatsApp status, like I need help, you know, getting upstate, asking for a friend, you know. So I thought that was very cute because people often are afraid to ask for help or for advice, so they pretend like they're asking for a friend. So I decided to turn that into a song. It's produced well. You know, I work with Rafi Burritos, very, very talented music producer. We did 3 songs this year. The video was shot on my rooftop with a team of very eclectic actors / musicians.
It was a great video, bro.
Great
Quality
video.
Was
so
fire.
Yeah, so the video is really, really good. My wife Mimi, who has a film production company, was like,
no way.
Yeah, this is my wife's video. She's like, I got to do a video. And
quality
like,
was crazy.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know, I don't really like music videos. Like, I don't really watch music videos ever. So like, do I really need to have? And she's like, no. Like, I want to make you a music video. So she wrote out the whole script.
Oh,
it's a script.
When they moved the background also, like,
yeah,
that reminded me. You know that John Mayer video? You know that one?
If you see me in the moonlight, what's that? Is that the one?
I think that's the one where he went to like some little like
yes,
garbage video production and
he's
with
like
a green screen.
Yes. Similar. I don't know that she even watched it, but yeah. Listen, there was basically nothing spontaneous in that video. Everything you see was planned out. Like she had a shot list. Scripted. I mean, and then like
it was so good though.
It was
when
good.
They're throwing pennies down. It was so good.
Yeah. It was all scripted. Then
spoiler alert, you know.
Spoiler alert. Throwing pennies. Yeah, it was a really fun time, like shooting that video. Like it was really fun. you try to get more people involved. You try to put more people in your stuff because it's a solo project. There's a limited amount of time people want to see your face and just hear you. They want to see that you're not living in a bubble by yourself. So I think it's cool. There's other people there, and like they're not just musicians. Like they're doing stuff. It's funny. But I literally did nothing. I just showed up and did what I was told to do, and then I had some comments on the editing, and that was it. I hope to do it again. It was really fun. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah,
And I
great.
saw you did something recently. You did like a looping show with a flute, and it's like a 10-minute set.
I did a funky set.
Yeah.
It was really intense.
Are you messing around with? Are you messing? Oh, the first time you ever tried it was in front of people?
Yeah, pretty much.
I bought this.
Yeah. It wasn't. I downloaded a trial of Ableton Live.
Right.
I downloaded it maybe like 3 days before I actually performed, and then I'm like, okay, how do you work this thing? But the problem is that you don't have like a foot pedal. And you have to I had to literally punch in on the keyboard, and I had to get on my MacBook, and I had to get the timing perfect because you have to punch in at the beginning of the bar, because then it loops. It was intense, but I think it came out all right.
Yeah. So where are you at with music in general right now?
Where am I at with music? Whoa.
I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have asked that.
I don't even know what that means, bro. So I put out 2 songs in the past couple months. One on for Jerusalem Day. Which I named Bitochei.
My favorite Christian holiday.
Which I named Bitochei Yerushalayim, which is about like the inner Jerusalem, like the Yerushalayim Shel Mala kind of concept. Which was a very interesting song. And I think it was a really great production. It was very simple, but it was like finger picking, stereo.
Are you producing these? Are you a producer?
I produced it myself in my comfort of my own bedroom. Yeah.
That is awesome. That is really awesome. That's the way. Yeah.
It's much harder though, because also you need to really get into like the zone of like I'm doing it, because it's just you know. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done.
Right. Totally.
It takes a lot for me. It takes like a lot, and then I produced another song called 10, which was based off of Daily Kabbalah.
Nice.
And it's the 10 spheres in 10 sphirot, the 10 emanations of creation. In song form. It's a very very interesting song that I wrote last year. Bitochechi, the thing with Bitochechi is I wrote it, and actually, because I was writing it now, as I was writing it, I was recording it. And I think that really came through, because usually like the other song, let's say 10, I wrote a year ago, and then I sang it now, and it's missing, like, I'm not really in it. It's a nice song. You hear the song. The lyrics are fire, in my opinion. I highlighted each word with it, which is another sphera. Like, I don't say the sphere straight out. I say, like, song starts, your wisdom stands for everything there is to know.
Right.
So, like, wisdom, that's chachma, right? Your understanding, which is bina, is whatever lets the wisdom flow, right? There's somewhere before them, which is keter, but it's a place we just can't go. You've always been there if we wanted to think so. Which is the concept of the sphirot in like Sefer Yetzirah, they don't really exist. They're like a projection onto reality that we're using in order to comprehend what's going on around us. So if you want to project that, if you want to see them in reality, you'll see them. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Because they're not really there almost. They are.
I love how connected you are to Kabbalah. That's like super cool, because like no one's asking you to be into Kabbalah. Like I feel like, and it's also I know you for a long time, and like you're pretty consistent. Like this is like, what does it mean for you to be into Kabbalah? Like what exactly do you learn, and like what does it do for you?
I mean, I've learned through different books. When I first got into Kabbalah, I got into it actually through Buddhist meditation, of all things. I was, into Alan Watts, studying Buddhist meditation. started experiencing like different states of consciousness. And then Dovey Spinner, another
Oh my
mutual
gosh,
friend,
Dovey Spinner.
saw that I was like going off the deep end with this meditation stuff. Like I was totally not in reality.
Right.
And he bought me Rabbi Kaplan's book, Jewish Meditation.
Which you like created your own like version of an audio book for, right?
I read through it
On
yeah.
YouTube.
I have a little audio book on YouTube.
Yeah. It's such a like great thing to do. Like, because now you probably know the book to an extent, you know?
I've read it multiple times. Yeah. I've read it.
Yeah.
Turned out when I read the book for the first time, I had somehow made it to chapter 9, not knowing it. Through all this meditation, this and that, I made it chapter 9, which he's very clear you should not be doing without a guru.
Oh, the book actually gives you instructions on what to do, right?
Yeah, it's more of like a hands-on manual. He wrote it for people who like actually want. But in chapter 9, he's like, these type of meditations like you should not be doing without a guru. And I'm like, whoops.
I missed that part.
I'm like, no, he's right. He's right. You shouldn't be doing this. Why? This is not
so
healthy.
You were really experiencing like altered states of consciousness.
Yeah,
right.
Very much so.
Right.
To the point where I at one point, when I was learning in Lakewood, somebody who had just finished detoxing from like hard drugs came to talk to me, and at that point I hadn't done anything crazy hard. And he spoke to me about like his acid trips, and I was able to share his terminology.
It sobered me up.
Pretty much, I've done acid multiple times since. I've done mushrooms, I've done ayahuasca, and like nothing matches my original Kabbalistic meditation stuff. Like nothing.
Wow. That's very. So you're saying before you had ever done psychedelics, you were experiencing crazy altered states of mind from.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what does that mean? Because the only meditation I really know about is the Sam Harris Waking Up app meditation, which is like the commercial. Though they're very good. They're very good.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
That app, I don't really use it as much anymore. Also, because Sam Harris started annoying me. So like it's hard for me to separate between like Sam Harris the intellectual and Sam Harris the guru. But that's my own, and like it's also weird. Like I'm meditating and I have like an iPhone with me. Like that just doesn't seem right for some reason. I should like record it on tape. You know, have like an audio cassette with like. That would probably be better.
Right.
Yeah, but I actually want to do that. Yeah. But that's my only experience. But what are these meditations like with Kaplan?
So Rabbi Kaplan has a certain method of understanding Kabbalah and a certain method of understanding meditation as well. Like what's going on with meditation and how is it working. A lot of people in general nowadays, when they think of meditation, they think more of, relaxing, deep breathing, clearing your mind, which is a type of meditation. But in Rabbi Kaplan's cosmology, or whatever term you want to use, in his way of understanding it, meditation is controlled thinking. Now, part of that control can be saying, right now I'm clearing out my head. And part of that control can be saying, right now I'm focusing my mind on one thing. But as long as you're controlling your thought process, in Rabbi Kaplan's understanding and his terminology that he uses, that's a type of meditation. Now, clearing the head, right, he would say is a type of sort of like hisbodedus. And then focusing the mind is a type of hisboninus.
By the way, I never knew what that word meant. I know what hisbodedus means, but I never knew what hisboninus meant.
Yeah.
You'll have to tell me what it means.
Hisboninus, he translates as contemplation. In other words, you're focusing the mind on one thing, and you're laser, you're like tunnel visioning in, and because you're focusing, now you see all these things that you never saw until now. You could be walking, every day you're walking down the same street, but you never really looked around, you never really paid attention, you don't really notice things, right? In other words, the mind space of Sherlock Holmes is a hisboninus headspace.
Because it's extreme focus. Right.
Extreme focus. You're seeing every little thing and you're drawing conclusions from it. You're like boom, 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 connecting dots. You're understanding things, right? And you take that mindset too far, what happens? A beautiful mind. You start seeing connections where they're not even there. You can overfocus. But it's kind of that kind of, it's kind of like a hot, I don't know if he really refers to that necessarily as a bonus, but he refers to it as a hot mental state versus a cold mental state. Cold is where you're more relaxed. You're letting things come to you. Cold is like when you're in the bathtub or you're in the shower and suddenly you have like that epiphany.
I only think of thinking in those ways, especially with writing. Like you think of it as things coming to you and you being the vessel to accept it. The act of like think right now, like I don't know what that is, you know, like I don't know what it means to like, okay, now I'm gonna start thinking. I can try to open myself up to an idea.
You're a musician. You're an artist.
Yeah,
You're a creative. It's different sides of the brain.
Different sides of the brain. Yeah. You know, like even like even with songwriting, it could be taken to an extreme. Like, oh, you don't have like you're stuck on a song, just leave it. Like, go to sleep. You'll wake up tomorrow and it'll be there. You know. Or with practicing your instrument. You practiced, like you haven't really gotten it, you've sort of gotten it. Go to sleep. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go to sleep right now, but like tonight you'll go to sleep. You wake up the next day and you have it better, you know? So there's nothing where like I can do the focus right now and get the result right now. Like I don't know how to do that, you know? So it's very interesting to hear about that as meditation. And yeah, it's definitely true that people today use meditation as a way to relax, you know, because people perceive life to be like very stressful, and this is the way to clear the mind. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of your journey, right?
That was the beginning. Yeah.
Right. We're talking like 10 years.
Not 7 years, 8 years,
7 years, 8 years. Right.
My last year in Camp Simcha, I think.
Right.
Oh, second to last year in Camp Simcha, not true. Second to last year. And
very interesting. And where has that led you like to today? Like, what's your relationship with Kabbalah now?
So I went through pretty much all of Rabbi Kaplan's books. Mm-hmm. I would say after that, I ended up meeting a Makubal who was at that point in Borough Park, learning there. We spoke a little bit. He learned some Arizal with me, and then he recommended a book called Das Elokim, which is a book written of like a compilation of the Arizal's system of Kabbalah. It's like a Likut, and then it has the Vilna Gaon on the bottom. And some of the Ramchal, like it has like another commentary on the bottom that, you know, explains things. I started learning that. I ended up losing my suitcase with the Sefer in it. I stopped learning it. Somebody bought it for me a couple years ago. I learned it again. I finished it this time with his shiurim on Kol HaLashon. Rafaim Goldstein. I didn't really understand it, and then I tripped, and then I started understanding it, which is a story in its own.
Right.
And then from there, I ended up, Z got me into this Rabbi Joel Bakst.
Interesting.
Who is the Kabbalah of the Vilna Gaon, which is fascinating stuff.
So do you feel like that's like a missing ingredient in like people's understanding of Judaism? Like, oh, like
1,000%.
Like, bro, like you don't know about Kabbalah, so like you're not.
It's not that you don't know about Kabbalah. This concept of where we separate it out of as if there's like like religion, like Judaism, whatever, and then there's like Kabbalah, like it's separate.
Right.
That concept to so many like people who study it, that concept makes no sense.
By the way, we spoke about this for 30 minutes. I still have no idea what Kabbalah is. I know that you meditated and you had certain experiences. Is that what Kabbalah is?
There's a lot. First of all, there's different schools of Kabbalah, and then there's different fields of Kabbalah, and then there's, you know, Rabbi Kaplan splits it up into 3 categories. He says there's the theoretical Kabbalah, which is like all the systems, like the Esser Sfirot, you know, the 10, and the frameworks and
which never interests me because like.
Okay, so that's the theoretical.
Yeah.
And then he says that the meditative.
Okay.
Which is a lot of what he spoke about.
Right.
Which is how I got it. And then there's the practical, which he's like, we don't really touch, we don't really dabble in it. Some sort of like white magic.
Can you like bend the spoon like a little bit, just like a drop?
Most people I know who've done that have done it with meditative.
They can move a spoon. Right. Like bend a spoon.
Rabbi Kaplan starts off Sefer Yetzirah, his Pirish, where he understands the whole Sefer Yetzirah, which is the Book of Creation, as a meditative manual. He starts it off in the intro by saying, if you learn this and you really understand it, it's a book that helps you attain telekinetic and telepathic powers.
Right.
Again, that doesn't mean you're a good person, though. It doesn't mean really anything. So Judaism now currently as religion tried focusing in more on like do's and don'ts and less on like
spoon bending,
on building. It's not spoon bending. It's really the spoon. You ever watch The Matrix?
Sure.
Okay, don't try to bend the spoon. It won't work.
Right. What happens there?
What do? You realize there is no. Just realize there is no spoon, and then it'll bend itself. Right. So what is that? What is that giving over? Which is all the whole Matrix is based on Kabbalah, incidentally. That's giving over
and one of the people is trans. Did you know that?
There you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not making a joke, by the way. I'm like being serious. Like there's, okay.
The Matrix is giving over the concept of when you can accomplish these feats. That means that you've solved something else. You've understood something else, which is a core like aspect of reality, and that's what gives you this power. But that doesn't mean you have to use this power for good. Again, that's the concept of like Bilam in the Torah. Right?
Sure.
You have a prophet. Like it doesn't mean you're, but you clearly understand something that nobody else understands. If you can do this, for better or for worse.
That's right. So you're saying that you can. I mean, I actually don't fully understand it. Like by seeing that there's no spoon, why would that allow you to bend the spoon? I think you explained it, but I didn't get it.
It's not allowing you to bend the spoon. It's if you can. He discusses this also. Right, Kaplan discusses it in meditation and Kabbalah in regards to like a Baal Shem Tov meditation towards like turning things into gold. But there's this concept of your reality. You create your own reality kind of concept, right? So if you can get to a place in your head in which in your reality there's no spoon, and that spoon is now part of your no reality, then that spoon also becomes batel. If in your head nothing's real and that spoon is part of the nothing realness, then that spoon can it's pliable. But you have to get to a place to where nothing's real. That's in this world generally when people hit that start hitting that place, you can't deal with it. They're crazy. We lock them up. You know what I mean?
Why is that a destination though? Like why is it better to think that nothing is real?
No one said it's better. I don't think it's necessarily better,
right? Because I had this argument with someone recently. I was talking to like an older guy who incidentally is very successful in business, and he's like in his 40s. And I dared to say that like I'm also interested in like practical success. And he started yelling how like nothing is real and everything is fine the way it is. And I'm like, okay, but if people still have like a desire to do something, like they can do it, right? Like it's okay. Because I equated happiness with doing well in your life. I said, like, if you do well in your life, if you're successful, like it'll make you happy. And he really got upset when I said that. Like to him, I sounded like a materialist, you know? And I'm like, you have to, like, you think money causes happiness. I'm like, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about just like doing well in your life will make you happy. And he's like, no, like you should be happy just like sitting in a chair and meditating. I'm like, okay, that too. And like some people's circumstances are really horrible and like they have to resort to that, because there's
right.
That's what's going on. But it was interesting that I really triggered a meditator, which is really fun.
So one of the my understanding is, from what I've read from a lot of people, or Rabbi Kaplan discusses this also in his book, that there are some spiritual experiences that are so subtle that the only way to attain them is by first achieving a state of nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then from that, like, nothing, you can feel that really that tiny something. In other words, like, let's say, just right now, let's say someone's whispering, right? But there's like a ruckus in the room. There's a lot of noise going on. You'll never hear the whisper, right? You have to quiet everything down and then listen in carefully, right?
That sounds like the meditation that I'm familiar with.
So
Right.
Part of that is also not just noise. Part of that is in reality. In other words, there's so much going on in the world in reality that it's in our head. We can't
process.
We can't tap into, like, we can't process anything. We can't figure out who we are. You know what I mean? So if you can get through all of that and say, like, it's all nothing, like, it's all not real, it's all whatever, you can divest yourself of all of that, and then you can say, okay, so, like, who am I? Like, what is going on? But
Right.
in order to ask who you are, you have to cancel out who everyone is telling you to be. Now, but the problem is, generally, our sense of self is based on what people are telling us to be. That's the reality. We've built it up over the past, 20 plus years,
20 plus.
however many years, right? We built up this concept of self. Now, if you cancel out all those concepts of self, all the concepts of who you were born as, Teal Swan likes to say, second you're born, people give you a stamp, right? Who you are and what religion you belong to, what gender, what race, what ethnicity, what country, like everything, right?
They give you a name, right?
They give you a name and a place, and right? If you can undo all of that, you'll get to a state of nothingness. But that's also that's petrifying. In my understanding, in Kabbalah, are you familiar with Maaseh Merkava?
I know it's a chariot.
That's the workings of the chariot. But we're not.
Right.
But in order to get there, you go through a storm wind, and then you go through a thick cloud, and then you go through a flaming fire, and then you start having some sort of spiritual experience. The storm wind is this mess of all these voices telling me who I am. Okay? The thick cloud is where I no longer exist. Right? I'm like, I'm consumed by depression, by, like, a lack of self. Right? Then the fire is when you grab onto one thing. It's like, oh my God, what about that? That's a cause I can get behind. And you become this flame that consumes everything else because, like, nothing else matters. You, like, tunnel vision.
That's really interesting. So you're saying first you have to kind of reject everything to then be able to dedicate yourself to something that's truly important to you on some, like, gut level that you can just pursue it.
But then the fear is that thing is also going to take you over.
Totally.
Right?
I say let it.
So all these things you can,
Right.
any of those things you can let. But if you want to have the real spiritual experience that they're talking about, this is one way of learning it. There's multiple ways of learning this, but one way of learning it is like this. One of the real spiritual experience, even that one thing that it's like, oh, this is the most, even that one thing you got to let go. You got to be like,
Yeah, I mean, these are like fundamentals to me of Judaism and how I was taught, because these things are taught, like, on a very simple level. It's like you're taught that, like, this world ain't it, like, just you have to, like, do the right thing, but the reward is not in this world.
so some people don't believe in that, that.
So
right?
some people don't
in
believe
Judaism,
in that.
even.
Totally. Right. In Judaism. Right. That's true. Even, let's say, right, it's true. Not everyone believes in that. But that's kind of how I was brought up. Like, hey, like, there's a program, you follow the program, and this is not the main show.
It's very dangerous, right? Sachs is also, like, talks about how dangerous that is.
Right. Yeah, it sounds bad. Me being a very curious person in general, I always struggled with that because, and I still have this discussion with people. They're like, oh, like, without religion, like, I would be depressed, And I'm like, why? There's, like, a lot going on. Like, nothing interests you. Like, there's nothing you want to pursue. Like, you just need, like, another world coming after your death, like to keep you going. You know,
what I would say
pretty...
is you need a sense of meaning, but you don't need religion.
Right. Okay. So, right. But why can't you find meaning in carpentry, you know, and
right.
podcasting, you know? And I'm not saying that as a joke. Like there are things you can really get into. There's a scene in Stessel. Do you like Stessel, the TV show?
I love Stessel. I'm not up to date, but I
it's
love
only 3 seasons.
Stessel.
It's fairly
I don't
easy
think
to
I saw the last
yeah.
season. I don't think I
Okay,
saw the
but
third season.
Do you remember season 2 with Nuchem, the uncle, the like really
love him,
real caricature.
Arurim.
Yeah, he's great. So there's a story there because Akiva's going through this whole struggle where he's a painter. Like he's got something going on. Like everyone else, they're just like eating, sleeping, making money, learning, marrying off their kids. He's got something going on. Like he can paint, you know? And he's all in. And like that's what keeps him going. And he's dating his first cousin, which is great, you know? And she tells him, you know, my father was also like really into stuff. Like you're very into painting. My father, you look at him as like this like business guy, this guy who has like no appreciation for anything beautiful. He just like wants money and power. He's actually like really into this classical song, like classical music, this piece from, I think Strauss. I don't remember which composer. He's really, really into it. And like it really gets him going. And he had it on tape and he used to listen to it. And then one day he deleted it. Like he like recorded over it and basically got rid of this tape because he said a Jew cannot be overtaken by anything. Like a Jew has to be focused on his service to God, whatever that means. It's open to interpretation. And like being so into this song, it's not wrong. It's not, you know, it's not inappropriate. It's not, but just being into this piece of art is in itself like an act of like rebellion against God and takes away from your service to God. And I was like, oh my God, that's literally the message I got growing up. You know, what's wrong with
this?
That's
the Litvish thing.
Yeah, like what's wrong with, well, I mean, Litvish. I mean, if you look at Lech Hasidim today.
The Hasidim today are more Litvish than anyone ever was.
Right. That's the way, you know, like what's wrong with a baseball game? What's wrong with a movie? What's wrong with something? Well, there's nothing really, really wrong. But like, at the end of the day, why are you focusing on these things? Anyway, postscript, you see in the next scene in the show that the uncle is listening to the song. Somehow he's got another copy of, do you remember this? He's got another copy of the song. And you see, he's like standing on his porch overlooking Nachlaot. It's supposed to be Mei Sharm, but it's clearly Nachlaot. And this like beautiful piece of classical music is playing. And he's just like, he's like pretending to conduct the music. And it's the most human you see him. Because the whole time he's like this grimy, slimy, just self-interested crook. And he's, you know, having this like experience of art. He's overtaken. And like, you see where he was coming from. Like, yeah, he is totally overtaken by this thing. But like, maybe like that's the best it's going to get for him, you know, in his life. So this idea of letting go of everything, like what you said, like making yourself empty, like making yourself empty for what? Like, why? Like, to me, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, like, this is it. Like, this is the best it's going to get. And, like, go for it. Like, listen to the music because it's clearly doing you good. But you clearly have, you know, I mean, there's obviously other levels and different ways of being in the world, but I thought I'd share that.
Yeah. Going back to the daily Kabbalah thing, by the way, there's an opinion in Kabbalah that this was kind of the debate between Yitzchak and Rivka when it came to Yaakov and Esav getting the brachos, right? That Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav, and Rivka wanted him to bless Yaakov, because there's an opinion I think I heard Reb Shimshon Pincus talk about this in one of his recordings, that Yitzchak felt that Esav should get all the goodness of this world. Esav should get Olam Hazeh, And Yaakov, he'll sit and learn, and he'll get Olam Haba. In other words, he wanted to split heaven and earth.
Right.
Kind of, right? And Rivka said, no, we got to unite them. So Yaakov should get this world also. Right? And that was another split again with Rachel and Leah, kind of. Now, Rachel was going to be the simple wife, Eishes Chayil, no like greatness, but it'll be Olam Haba. Like you won't Olam Haba won't. And Leah was like, no, we want to be great. We want to build. We want all this greatness, right? And all the potential comes from Leah, kind of, but the core comes from Rachel. Rachel's like the base, the foundation. And that's why he says that Leah had the kings, and Leah had the priests, and Leah had the rabbis. They're all from her kids.
Right, right.
And that's also the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef is like the foundation, and then Mashiach ben David is the greatness building on the foundation.
So yeah, I mean, there seems to. So you're saying that initially, like the way we understand, Yitzchak wanted to split these things up, and have.
There's an opinion like that, in my understanding.
Right,
yeah.
that he wanted to have one son who's like spiritually just that, whatever that means, right?
Like Yisachar Zvulun, almost,
right,
probably.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's an interesting split. But
Chassidus is not into splitting. Chassidus is into uniting.
Right.
If you ask a Chabad guy, like, what's the point of life? Which is funny because if you ask a Litvish, they'll learn Torah, right?
Right.
But you ask a Chabadsker, they'll tell you Dira Batachtonim.
Right.
That's their
right.
To bring God down to earth. And this is a big Kabbalistic of David Aaron. I don't know. I've watched.
I know the name, but I'm not familiar with his work.
Great,
right.
Animated Kabbalah and stuff like that. So he talks about this, and he says, let's say the idea of giving a hug. So the idea of giving a hug is I take this concept of love. It's an idea. It's like in the ether, and I take it and I bring it down and I give it over to you in a hug. So he's like, you're embodying these spiritual concepts.
So you had an appreciation for these ideas before psychedelic drugs, but
after meditation.
But after meditation, were you a spiritual person even before that?
I didn't understand the term. I don't know. I guess yeah. I don't know how you define it.
How do you define a spiritual person?
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are drawn to Hashem, literally.
So then, I would say, as a kid, I was very drawn,
they're drawn to Hashem, and they're not interested in like stuff, they're not interested in money. They're not interested in like just being like a very high status person. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. Like, I see these people like in my own family, like people who just want this feeling of being like connected to Hashem. So yeah, I guess you're that type of person, As
a kid, I think I was more
Unless
so.
the podcast blows up, then you'll just, right.
As a kid, I think I was, and then you get into like high school, and I grew up in Pennsylvania. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, and I went to like the Hebrew day school there. In the community, there really wasn't a concept of like money or status or like what are they doing. It just wasn't it was like very out of town. Like nobody cared, I'm saying that kind of spot that I grew up, really these concepts, they just weren't really there. And then I got into high school, and then you start with all these, the pressure and the this and the that and the status, like a big high school thing. Before high school, I like barely had concepts of these things, and a lot of control also. Before high school, it's funny because a lot of schools in let's say the New York area, they can control everything. They can tell you if you have a TV at home, you're not allowed to come. If your mother doesn't cover her hair, if this, if that, they are controlling. They want control of everything. And in Scranton, not only there's no such thing, but for them, if they get a kid into the Hebrew day school who's like, mother doesn't dress sneeze and he has TV at home and mother, they watch movies, they're like, it's a win for them when I was growing up. I don't know what it's like now, but for them, out of town, Hebrew day school, I had a kid in my class. He came to must have been my 7th or 8th birthday. We were still living on the farm. He came, I think he brought me a football, Redskins, or basketball. I don't remember which one he brought me. He brought me some great birthday party, though. I really appreciated it. And he came, he had just shot his first squirrel. He was like 7 or something. Okay. Like a real red. And the school was like so happy to have him. And he came in, he had no concept of Jewish anything. Like we had to help him in class. He wasn't in my grade. He should have been in the grade above me, but he came in a grade below. I'm talking in first grade. He came in a grade below because he had no background, like like nothing, you know?
It's the out of town appeal. Like you actually matter to other people, you know? I remember when I was doing my time in Omaha, like it almost annoyed me. Like at the end of every like davening and like meal, like, oh, this person was there. Oh, like that person showed up. Oh, it's so exciting. That family was there. I was like, what are we doing? You know, but that's what it is. It's
it
like,
has its setbacks.
Yeah.
You know?
But it was, you know, everyone really mattered. I mean, I really mattered, you know, when I would go there, I felt very, very welcome. You know, being a big fish in a small pond, like definitely has its appeal, like for sure. But you're saying that there was like a lack of materialism, or maybe like a lack of like social games, right? Which
very much so,
right,
yeah.
right. That's interesting. Yeah,
there still is. I go back to visit it. It's really not such a thing.
Right. Yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say about Baltimore, which I've never even been to. You know, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah,
But then I got into high school, and then I came to Israel, and then it started affecting me more, and then I finally went through some like tough times, which I wasn't like really familiar with, and then at the end of the tough times, I really lost myself, and then that's when I got into meditation. I'm like, where did I go? Like, how did I get from here to here? Like from there, like I used to be there, now I'm here. Like what happened? How did I get from point A to point B?
What did it mean to lose yourself?
What did it mean to lose myself?
You don't have to just go into any detail.
I radically changed my life goal, my self-image, what I was interested in, where I wanted to be. Like everything somehow got turned upside down, and everything I thought I wanted, I somehow didn't want anymore. Mm-hmm. And everything I once loved, I somehow hated. And then vice versa. Everything I thought was like stupid and whatever, I suddenly was like all a big fan of, right? And these things can happen also in like an instant. Like, if you believe in God, there's a lot that comes with that. And if you somehow work up to a point in which you no longer believe in God, a lot of things disappear with that. And then suddenly you believe in God again, and then boom, everything comes back. And there's a certain point in the middle when I was talking to someone where I'd wake up Jewish, by the time I hit like breakfast, I was Christian, right? For lunch, I was Muslim. And then by the time I went to bed, I was a Buddhist,
That's very good.
Just because like I was
right.
like thinking so hard, trying to understand like what I believe and what this means and this and that, and like working through different concepts and ideas.
On one hand, it's so like erratic to like be in such turmoil and like to change so much. On the other hand, it sounds like you were good at not getting stuck. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you were getting stuck. But like you kind of went with the flow. Like, okay, so if I think this, like I'm this. If I think that, I'm that. I think a lot of people get stuck, where they're just like not happy with whatever's going on, and they don't change anything. They just like remain in that level of unhappiness, and then you never get to the next level, which is right. Difficult. Which is really difficult.
Sometimes it's not even that you're necessarily changing your opinions, by the way. It's just that you're understanding the boxes.
Right.
Like I was talking to somebody last week, especially about like these Israeli terms that I don't even get, like dati and Masorati versus Haredi and all these different terms I don't really know, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say for a second, let's just imagine a world where I know all my beliefs and like all my shitot and like my entire philosophy. I have it set, strict, right? But that doesn't mean I understand what box I'm in.
Right, you might not be in any box.
Right, maybe. But like, let's say for everyone who wants to put me in a box, right?
Right.
You ask me like, what do you wear? And I'm like, I wear a big kippah and like, I have a beard. You're like, oh, you're Haredi. But I'm like, but I'm not wearing like tzitzis right now. And you're like, oh, so you're not Haredi. I'm like, but I'm not wearing a 4-cornered garment. Why should I wear tzitzis? And then you're like, so you are Haredi, but you're Balshita?
Right.
And then as I express my opinions, you have to keep reorganizing which box I belong in. And generally, we don't really do that with ourselves to the point where you can have someone who's totally not religious and they still consider themselves Orthodox. Or vice versa, which is like funny, our self-perception.
Which is funny because like that's what I was like trying to say all in the beginning. Like I a lot of this has to really do with like who you're hanging out with. Like I really view this whole thing as more tribal and less what you think, because a lot of people don't think anything. You know what I mean?
I have a neighbor across the street where I live in the Yishuv who's very chazak. He's like a Rambam Yid, He's a shochet, he's a sofer, he's like very like worked on himself, and real Balmidos, a real Yid. And somebody once asked him, like, why do you wear such a huge yarmulke? Like, this is like a tiny, compared to his, like, makes you a better person. Like, what's the deal with the yarmulke? And his reply, which was so beautiful, was he's like, because I want to associate with a group of people, and like, this is what they wear. And if they wore a bowl on their head, I'd wear a bowl.
Right. Well, I hear that. I totally hear that. And by the way, that's why I wear a black yarmulke. Because for a long time, I was wearing a blue yarmulke. And like all my like associations with people were mostly people who were wearing black yarmulkes. And at a certain point it occurred, and I had like a blue tallis also, like a white tallis with like blue stripes. And then I realized at some point, like, I think I've done enough to, like, prove my uniqueness to people. Like, even if I wear a black yarmulke and I have, like, a black tallis, everyone can still tell who I am. So, like, I might as well wear the black yarmulke because I actually want it to fit in a little more, Like, I didn't need the blue yarmulke anymore to, like, let everyone know that I'm different, Yeah,
but it's still kind of also you don't want to give it too much focus at the same time. It's like a tough balance,
So that's why you should wear blue, or that's why you should wear black.
You do whatever you got to do. Are you familiar with the Rebbe Nachman story about the dot on the head? I think I've said this over to people, but I don't know if it was part of Daily Kabbalah.
Is it the one that like we're all crazy and this like reminds us that we're crazy? Yeah. You should say it again.
So he said, I think he said it. So basically, Rabbi Nachman has a story about a king whose advisors come to him and they say, "Listen, for the wheat that grew this year is it's psychedelic. It makes people a little crazy. What should we do?" And the king's first thought is like, "Let's just burn it all." And they're like, "Yeah, but if we burn it all, people are going to starve to death. They're going to die, right? It's better to be a little crazy." He's like, "Okay, so, let's save it and like just give it to the people, but the good wheat from this year, save some and put it to the side and we'll eat the good wheat, right? That way we won't go crazy. We're running the government. We'll be sane, and the population, all the populace, the common folk, they'll all be crazy." And they're like, "Yeah, but if all the common folk are crazy and we're sane, they're going to think we're the crazy ones and they're going to rebel." Right? So finally they came up with an idea. They drew dots on everyone's head and they said, "Listen, we're going to eat the crazy wheat, the psychedelic wheat. We're going to be crazy with everyone else. When we look at each other, we'll see a dot on each other's heads and we'll be like, 'Yo, what's a dot for?' And then we'll remember, oh, we're crazy and we won't make any rash decisions." Right? So I think he said it over because like Judaism, we've eaten some psychedelic wheat. Like this is not pure Judaism. We have a lot of stuff that somehow got mixed in there. It's a little messed up. But at the end of the day, if we don't eat any of it, we'll die. Like we need purpose, we need meaning, we need spirituality, we need it. Now with it comes some bullshit, right? So try to just remember there's some bullshit mixed in.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach because I always liked the story and I never fully got like the lesson out of it. I just like the story, you know. But your conclusion is actually very good. Like you need a certain bullshit just to do life, you know. You need like you need some kind of system. Yeah, I wouldn't even say it about Judaism. Like I don't like that. I don't like that idea of like, oh, like it's pure, but anyway we do it, it's not going to be pure. But like really it's pure because to me that makes it not pure. Do you understand? Like, because there's no way to access the purity, you know. So then why is
I don't know what that means. When you drink water, let's say, right, and there's stuff mixed in, you're still drinking. You still get the water. You also get some of the stuff mixed in. But if you wouldn't drink that, you would dehydrate.
Right. You have to drink the water, is what you're saying. You have to eat the wheat. Right. I have to think about that one a little more. Yeah.
There's this British public intellectual. I'm trying to remember his name right now. He's one of these famous, podcasters. The name's gonna come to me later. I don't remember. Anyhow, but there's this one of these people who he had this great line, and he said, "I think the West is realizing now that the only thing worse than religion is the lack of religion." Right. Because we looked at religion and we said there's a lot of things here that are fucked up. Let's get rid of it.
Right.
And then we're like, whoa.
Right.
Oh, Douglas Murray.
Douglas
Murray.
I love Douglas Murray. He's so eloquent.
He's so good.
Anyone with a British accent is,
He's so good. No, but he's like so direct.
He's incredible. He's incredible. I love him.
He's very intelligent. Gives over. His delivery is. He's fire.
I love him. Yeah. I mean, but that's a very hard place to be. You know. Your place, I have a lot of respect for that place. And Douglas Murray and Jordan Peterson and to some extent maybe Eric Weinstein also. Are you into Eric Weinstein at all?
Yeah, I like the Weinsteins.
Brett less, like he's a little bit different. I mean, I like him also, but he's a little different, a little more just a.
And Heather.
Brett and Heather. My wife loves Heather.
She's great.
Yeah.
She's really good.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like her much better.
Yeah. But that approach of like, and like Ben Shapiro is like a much dumber version of that also. Like, I mean, it's similar ideas, but
I wouldn't say dumber. I would say more tribal, more, political.
Yeah. Like baby in bathwater, like we need to keep certain religious ideas, even though like, yes, there's harm that historically came with it, like still comes with it, but like they are our foundations and like we need it no matter what. Like that's very tough, because there's two ways to approach that. There's one way to approach it where you're like a non-religious person and you're like, hey, I think we need a certain level of religion like for society. So I don't even know if those people are speaking for themselves. They're basically saying like for the Hamayinam, like everyone needs religion, like society like cannot function without religion. And the other approach is, a person themselves saying, oh, like I was raised religious, so like I need to have religion in my life because, as much as like I can intellectually understand different things, but like my foundation like is religion. Like I started with religion and like I need to keep that going for myself. So the second way is like almost not as intellectually honest because listen, you were brought up with religion, so like that's just what you're comfortable with personally. It doesn't mean that someone else can't do without it.
Can I tell you another option?
Sure.
Which comes from Carl Jung, kind of, but it's really Kabbalah. This is like OG Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Very, very mystical. He knew Kabbalah, like he knew the terminology, right. Like he, talks about it. But basically, Kabbalah says that you always have a God. whether you like it or not. Because the top of your hierarchy of importance that helps you act out in the world, Jordan Peterson also talks about this a lot, that is your God. Whatever you're trying to live up to, the most important thing in your life that's driving you, that is your God. Now the question is, and this, by the way, is what Christianity got into. And Christianity said, let that thing be love. Another way of saying it kind of is let that God be Jesus. Right? In other words, try to live up to that.
Meaning give it a name, is that what you're saying?
Not give it a name. In other words, Judaism at that top kind of we're very vague. It's the Yud K Vav K. We don't have that top of what we're supposed to look is reality in and of itself. It's very hippie if you really break it down. Right? Existence, past, present, and future, all in one. It's okay, but
what does it mean?
What should I do?
Right.
What should I do? How do I live my life? So this is the concept kind of having an intermediary, the concept of the Egel Hazav, which is also the concept of Jesus. Right?
Totally.
Which is, in other words, he'll show me how to live a godly life.
Because
I'll try to copy him.
I've literally had breastlift people tell me look, there's no way to connect to God. It just doesn't work. You need a person to tell you what to do. And I'm like,
it's so crazy. I'm learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings right now. I'm in the middle of Klutim Moran. I hope to finish in time for Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
And I just finished this Histapchus HaNefesh, and I haven't read all his books, but to date, I have no idea where anyone gets any of their opinions that they attribute to Breslev, any of them, anywhere. I don't get any of it to date. I'm learning these farm. I'm what are you talking about?
Right.
Rav Nachman's whole Torah, by the way, Afilu Ba'astara Shebetocha Astara, that whole thing is that no matter how in the dumps you are, God's there with you. Not you need in the middle.
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, look, people, so you relate to that probably because you have your own spiritual experiences. So you're tapped into something, right? You have when people say God, you're oh yeah, it's that thing that I occasionally or constantly experience. So you don't need a guy telling you, hey, do this, do that, because you feel connected to something. People don't feel so connected, they just don't. And it's not because they're bad people. It's just I think it's just a different.
No, I totally get that.
It's a different personality.
But to say you can't do it, I don't get.
They feel like they can't do it. Yeah. To me, I've had points in my life. I'm not really in that stage now, but I've had stages in my life where I literally felt God's presence, and I would talk to God and I knew God was listening, it was clear as day. And to have a person telling me, hey, do this, do that, that was the part I never got. I was who are you? You're like me, you have the same problems that I have. I'm a human being, you're a human being. So the concept of a Rebbe actually is the part that always freaked me out. Where's that magical Rebbe, which is sometimes I'll talk to I was recently talking to a Chabad rabbi, and we basically came to the conclusion that our main disagreement is the fact that he encountered the Rebbe for the first 15 years of his life, and I didn't. So he had that experience, and I don't know, maybe if I was a Chabad Chassid, and maybe if I had been, connected to the Rebbe when he was alive, I may have had a whole different life. I wasn't raised Chabad, but people have these extremely powerful people in their life, and they really connect to those people. I never had that. People have really profound religious experiences, and that connects them. So you could have one, you could have the other, and both end up being called Judaism, This third thing that Jordan Peterson is after and Eric Weinstein is after is much more complicated because they kind of don't believe at all, Eric Weinstein for sure, I mean, he says he doesn't believe. He calls himself a Jewish atheist.
Jordan believes.
Jordan Peterson
kind of,
started saying more now that he believes, but he basically says like
Jordan Peterson, in my opinion, he has a Kabbalistic version of God. That's it.
He also
he
has a Kabbalah. Okay, he has a Kabbalistic version of God.
That's it.
But he says things like God is the ideal.
What is Jordan's
What is?
Right, because in Kabbalah, again, the top of your hierarchy of whatever that concept that you're trying to live up to, that whatever, that's God.
Yeah, but
now,
you see the problem. Right, the problem is like what happens when you go to a guy like Richard Dawkins, who's one of the leading atheists in the world, and says he's like, I don't believe in God. So you say, okay, what's your highest value? He says science and truth. You say, oh, like that's your God.
That's your God.
Yeah.
He'd say that's cute.
Yeah, that's
he
cute.
would say that's cute, but that's not what people mean by God.
Yeah, like you cannot tell me who my God is. So some people have a relationship to this thing called God.
He'd think you're being, in my opinion, he'd think you're being disingenuous.
Totally.
And you're playing this word game.
And
but if you read through,
and this is how people argue with like the left. They say, oh, like you're religious about your things, oh, like leftism.
That's true. The left is a religion. 1,000%.
It
in my opinion, yeah,
it functions like a religion, and I might even agree with you.
Then it's a religion.
Left is a religion. But
if it looks like a cat and it sounds like a cat and it walks like a cat, then it's a cat. This goes back to our boxes. Okay?
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, the whole Chaim Walder thing, right? There was a big article in the like newspaper or whatever, right? Religious Orthodox man, right? Inappropriately, molests, rapes, whatever he did children. I'm like, that sentence to me makes no sense.
Right. By definition, he's not religious. Right.
If you're religious, it's like you don't do those things. I don't even know how you. So what does it mean, religious Orthodox? It means he wore a white shirt and black pants. Nice. Kol hakavod. Slow clap.
I like what you're saying, but people don't view these things.
End of the day, everyone ate the psychedelic wheat and they don't realize.
Right.
Sure.
End of the day, if you say this guy is an atheist, people will be like very upset. Like, this guy is an atheist, like kick him out. Like, what's this guy doing here? As opposed to this is an Orthodox man who raped a woman. Oh, that's terrible. Meaning they'll kick him out also. They'll kick them both out. But people, from people themselves will say, oh yeah, this is a from person. What a chil Hashem. They won't say what you're saying. They won't say like, oh, he's not from, because again, it goes back to labels. You don't see them. I don't see them, but people see them. That's the way people view the world. And for someone to come in and say, no, everyone's religious, everyone believes in God, like God is just your highest ideal, like that'll be true when people say it's true. It's not true. It's not true now.
Can I?
Yes.
Another hot take.
Sure.
I think in their zeal to pretend that everyone deep down believes in God, they created this issue. Because in other words, they don't want to acknowledge the fact that some people really don't believe, and that's a valid opinion. So in their effort to do that, we have to say even Chaim Walder really believes in God. Whatever, it just happens to be he's about taiva. You create that because you're failing to acknowledge the fact there are people out there who are way more intelligent than either one of us. They're way more intelligent than any of our rabbis or any of our rabbeim or any of our, and they don't believe in God. That's the reality. I said it.
That'll be the clip. That'll be the clip.
And there are people who are and there are people who are even more intelligent than them, or there are people who are equally intelligent than them who do believe in God.
It's very
okay. But if you don't acknowledge that, then it has to be everyone believes in God. And you create this reality by failing to acknowledge the fact that some people who honestly don't believe.
So then what's the function of like Jordan Peterson? Because a lot of people get excited about him, like, oh, he's going to give like a series of lectures on the Bible. Like, do you connect to those lectures at all? You love them, right?
I love them.
They're Kabbalah.
Right, most of them.
They're Kabbalah. So maybe you already know them without him. Maybe you already know this. But people like the idea that something that they thought was simple and maybe childlike, right, was actually explained to them on a deeper level. And like that's kind of what we love about Judaism, right? That like as a kid, you learn about Moshe Rabbeinu and you understand it on a 5-year-old level, and like as a 20-year-old, you understand differently. And that's kind of the way it was like actually sold to us, like, oh, you grow with Judaism. But and like people appreciate that a lot, and people say, oh, I don't believe in God. Well, you don't believe in the old man in the sky. God is the ideal. Oh, great. So as much as you thought you got out, they put you right back in. You wanted to understand the parsha on a deeper level. We gave you a deeper level. You wanted a deeper understanding of God. We gave you a deeper understanding of God. So that's nice. That works for some people. But
some people think you're playing games with them.
Some people think you're playing games with them. Very good. You finished my sentence perfectly. Right.
1,000%. Yes. But now the question is, go back like 2,000 years, 3,000, right? How did those people understand it? Look at how they were living their lives. They clearly didn't. If they understood these things literally, they definitely didn't live their lives like they did, right? And then in general, you get a preacher like Jesus, and you listen to what he's saying. It's very clear they didn't think there was a garden out there with, with all the, whatever pleasures of the world, that if we only look, this wasn't an El Dorado story, right? And even the original people who made the El Dorado story, I don't think they thought it was really there. The same way no one thought that if you climb this mountain, you'll find these gods at the top. The common people may have thought that. The idiots might have thought that. But I have no reason to believe in mythos, in like the ancient mythology, that people didn't really understand what they were saying. They were giving over these stories. I have no reason to assume that. And then over time, or their kids or whatever, people didn't realize that like these are ancient stories.
Are you saying that
it doesn't?
Because I remember Peterson saying somewhere that like, hey, like this whole way of thinking, like truth, not truth, like it's a scientific way of thinking, and people didn't even think like this before. Meaning people didn't perceive truth the way we perceive truth. Like we perceive truth as like it is or it isn't. And he's like, that's not how people used to think. Is that what you're trying to say, or not really?
I'm not trying to say that. No. I'm trying to say that it sounds like a game because I keep moving the bar, right?
Right.
So it looks like a game, right? Because I set the bar here, God is a rabbi in the sky, and you're like, that's not true, and I'm like, okay, God is, right? God is, and you're like, that's not true, and I'm like, okay, God is, right? So every time I keep moving the bar, and you keep getting frustrated, right? But let me ask you a question, right? When you that person from 2,000 years ago, that rabbi, like, do you think they thought God was a rabbi in the sky? And let's say the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? They thought like God was a rabbi in the sky. Like, what? I have no reason to assume that. They're having this crazy spiritual trip. Clearly, if you read the script, right? And they didn't listen to Moshe blindly. They fought with him all the time, and they bickered, and there's a whole story, Korach, and this and that. Like, we have this concept of like Judaism's about blindly listening to a rabbi. Somebody has that concept, right? But if you look back historically, they never understood it like that. So like, why should I assume they thought that if you climb this mountain, you'll find gods at the top? Because we're reading it, and that's how it reads? Of course it's how it reads. Okay. So did they believe, like, I have no reason to assume any of these people believed any of these things. In other words, their bar was never here. Their bar was always up here. So if you understand that, you don't have to get frustrated. The bar belongs up here. We moved it down. And then as you keep calling me out for moving it down, I keep moving it, and then you get frustrated because I'm stupid.
You read the Sadoros, then. You believe that people used to be connected to something much more powerful than...
Probably not all of them. I'm sure there were still people who didn't understand these concepts.
Because if you look at the world, it seems like we're getting smarter, but you're saying not really. Like when it comes to...
We're getting smarter, but as we get smarter, we're moving the bar up, and we feel like it's disingenuous.
Right.
We are getting smarter. I'm not disagreeing with that, and we're starting to move beyond pshat, almost ki'ilu, not really, and move into sod. Like we're moving past the simple reading and we're saying
Right,
there's a
right.
deep message here.
So would you say psychedelic drugs are really the answer for having that connection to spirituality for a lot of people?
I think they can be used as a tool to understanding that there's more here. I don't think they're necessary to maintaining different states of consciousness. I think meditation is probably more useful and more effective and a lot cheaper.
Right.
A lot more cost effective.
Right.
And again, if you could become addicted if you're acquiring a substance, then that could become an addiction. That could be an whole problem in and of itself.
Yeah, I was listening to Rogan and Richard Dawkins literally today, and Rogan's just like, hey, like, I've done psychedelics, I've seen things, so I'm just like open to like many possibilities. And like he's like, Richard Dawkins, like, have you done psychedelics? And he says like, no, I have not. You know, which by the way, there are other leading atheists who have done psychedelics and, you know, encourage psychedelics, but Richard Dawkins is not one of them. So it just seems to me like that became an avenue. And I hear a lot from people now, just making psychedelics like almost mainstream. It's not really mainstream. It's just like where I hang out. You know, there's like a lot of people who seem to be doing that because they want that connection to spirituality, and there's all types of interesting things going on. And I'm just like wondering, like, maybe that's the way. You know, maybe that's the way when you're an adult and you're like, I want to have a spiritual experience. And like, there's all these magical drugs out there that you're just discouraged from experimenting with. But maybe that's the answer. Yeah. It could be a tool.
It could be a tool, you know. I also don't think on a certain level that the spiritual experience or, you know, that spiritual state of mind or whatever is necessarily 100% the goal. Like, I think the religious people are onto something when they say like the way you live your life, you know, like the fact that you have this endless love for people, right? So that's like Kabbalah would say that's all the oros. It's all like the energy and all the beauty. But you need kalim. You have to like express it. There are people who I know who like really care and they're really loving and really that. And they can't, they just keep screwing you over because they're not grounded at all in reality. And they don't understand that, like, you know, there are certain, you know, certain things you need or you know, certain responsibilities that they have. And they're like, yo, it's all cool, man. And it's like,
right.
Me over.
Totally. I love it. I love it when like hippies are like, yo, we should like open a community and just like all live together on a moshav. I'm like, I am not living on a moshav with you. Like, there's no way. There's no way. Right. We need regular people.
I was once making Havdalah at home after I had like a big group of people, right? And I filled up the cup, you know, not like crazy. I'm not looking to like waste, you know, wine. I don't get that whole like, you know, just whatever. I'm just not. And in the middle of Havdalah, someone decided my cup wasn't full enough, right? Now, it's weird for you to decide things in my house. He reached over, took the bottle of wine, and started filling my cup up more, like in the middle of Havdalah. I'm like, just in general, that's a bit of like a, right? It's a bit of like a breach. It's like cross the boundary a little bit. Like, this is not, it's just like weird. But he poured a ton and he splashed and he spilled and he stained my shirt like all over. And without missing a beat, he goes, Shefa. Right? Which means like they're so like bountiful, you know?
That's
like
a great
and I'm
story.
like, in my head, I'm like, the correct thing to say right now is sorry, whoops, you know, like what, like,
yeah.
So like these mental states can be great, but they have to be like channeled and understood and like in your, you know, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
The
right?
road to hell, yeah.
So like the fact, you know, the fact that you're feeling all these high mental states and this and that, and now what? I'm sure Bilam was feeling high mental states also.
Right.
He's talking to God.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, there's I think the conclusion is that like, well, there's a lot of conclusions. Like, I think we did some pretty dense stuff here. Like this is I don't usually have these discussions, and it's funny that I'm having one on camera because like I don't really have them.
Caught red-handed.
Yeah, caught red-handed. Yeah. There's many approaches to like Judaism, but yours, I mean, I don't know exactly like what yours is, but you know, with you there seems to be something where like Hashem is in front of you, and not like in like a I'm making a hesped about you way. Just like there's a real entity, called God, you know, and there's a real respect also for the tradition, like yeah, Bilam was a character, you know, like you know there was a Judaism 2,000 years ago, and like this and this happened, and it's very cool. It's very cool. I really like that. So my wife's about to start playing bass in the room. So before that happens, this whole entire intellectual discussion was just for me to plug my new song and music video. Everything we said about Jordan Peterson and Mizrahi and Kabbalah is very nice for those people who care about that. But please, I need more subscribers. I need more likes. Listen, if you like the video, share it with the next person, and don't just share it like right, like hey, like I enjoyed this, you know. That's the pitch. That's the pitch. And thank you, Yitzy, for bringing me on to talk about it. I love making music, and the more people that hear it, the better. It's very weird because like you think you're making it for yourself, but like the second like someone tells you they like it, you're like, ooh, now I want everyone to hear it, you know? So as much as like you're L'Shem Shemayim, it's like to a point. You're like L'Shem Shemayim until it's out and people are giving you good feedback. Then you feel like it's your responsibility that you want, you know, more people to hear it. So it feels self-serving, but it's not. It's not for me. It's for the music. Thanks for bringing me on. This has been very cool.
Music Lishma.
Music Lishma. Yeah.
I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think I coined that hashtag on Instagram.
Music Lishma.
Yeah, it's I made it into a hashtag.
Oh, you didn't just come up with it now. Oh, that's great.
No, I made it like years ago. I made it into you know. I don't think any posts existed with it before me.
Yeah, hashtags are dead, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was just that concept.
Yeah,
you know, it's really like an expression of the the idea.
Can I come as a guest again? I really enjoyed this.
I would love to have you again.
You don't even have to record them. You could just tell me that, you know, like it's really fun talking to you.
I would love to have you again.